Most people who are selling online aren't thinking about it all the way through. And then you end up with moments like this. An Instagram star with 2 million followers couldn't sell 36 t-shirts, and a marketing expert says her case isn't rare. Yes, followers do not equal sales. And I've written about this in my book, Will It Fly? I talked about it again inside of my book, Superfans. And I want to ensure that you understand that it takes more than just building a following, building an audience to generate revenue and start a business. You need a little bit more. And that's what we're going to talk about today. The common business funnel looks kind of like this. First, you build an audience. Then you create a list, an email list, and then you sell to the people who are on that list. However, this is wrong. This is missing something. It's incomplete. There are 2 really important parts of this funnel that most people miss. It's actually 5 steps, and we're going to plug in these holes so your funnel is less leaky. So this is what I like to call the 5-finger funnel. We're going to go through part by part today, starting at the top with audience. Now, there's lots of different ways to go about building an audience. I'm not going to talk about them very much in depth here today, but I think it's important to understand the brand that you are building and what you want to become known for, because that will then attract the audience that you then want to drive into this next component that I'm going to share in just a second. Also, a huge thank you and shout out to today's sponsor, Hostinger.com, an amazing platform to build your website on, which I'll talk about a little bit later in this video. There's a very important phrase I need to share with you to help you throughout this, because you could build an audience of all different kinds of people. And this is why people who go viral for random videos that they create on Shorts, Reels, or TikTok, it's very difficult for them to sell or actually turn that into a business, because it's made up of a bunch of different random people who just the algorithm serves them those videos for. And they have this big following, this big subscribership, and then you get the case of this Instagram follower with millions of followers, and they're just not able to push any product at all. So here's the phrase: the riches are in the niches. The riches are in the niches. And I know it's pronounced niches, but that does not rhyme as well. So just go with me. I know there's going to be commenters about how it's niches and riches in the niches. That just doesn't work. Now, it's a bit counterintuitive, right? Because when you niche down, you are telling more people that you are not for them. But by doing that, by creating sort of a boundary around the things that you talk about, the problems that you solve, who it is that you're serving, you're actually able to help more people. The truth is, if you try to help everybody, you're going to help nobody. You become their go-to resource. You become their favorite. You become somebody who they purchase from. But not only that, they become your marketing team for you. They start talking about you to other people and start attracting more people like them into your brand. This is what I talk about in my book, Superfans. It's what the whole book is really about. So go ahead and watch that brand in a hand video if you want a little more help with discovering who it is that you should be targeting. But once you start to build that audience, before you bring them into an email list, which is very, very common, and I'll give you some resources and tools to help you do that in case you're just starting out. But before we go into our list, we need to plug in that first hole, which is this. We need to define what the target problem is. You're going to have an audience that is made up of all kinds of different people who are still within that niche, who have different sets of problems. They have different concerns, different challenges, and it's really important that if you're building a list, that you build a list based on specific problems, targeted problems. For example, on my website, smartpassiveincome.com, and here on YouTube, I help a lot of entrepreneurs do a lot of different things. One of those things specifically is to help people learn how to start a podcast. We've had the highest viewed podcast tutorials here on YouTube since, 2012 or something like that. And so you can see on my website, when people visit here, based on Google or from those YouTube videos, they can get a free checklist for starting their podcast. I'm not just saying, hey, join my newsletter. We do have those call to actions, but these work really, really well, especially if you're just starting out. So of all the problems that your target audience has, choose one and have that become the targeted problem that you build that list around. You can get a little bit more advanced later when you start targeting other problems, and you can start segmenting your audience, which means you can kind of contain groups of people with problem A over here and problem B over here and problem C over here. And then you can send them individual emails based on the different problems or based on the different solutions and perhaps products that you have to serve them with. So that's a little bit down the road. If you're just starting out, of the audience that you've built now, before you drop them into an email list, give them a specific problem that you are helping them solve, such that they would then join that email list to get that solution, or to learn more, or to discover more things in and around that, or to see how you have overcome that challenge as well. Here's another example. Rick Mulready helps business owners grow in revenue and scale. However, he's being very specific with how he uses AI. And you can use, or actually you can go to rickmulready.com to join his newsletter. He's actually here on YouTube as well if you want to follow him. He's got thousands of people learning about his workflows every single week through his subscription, AI-ifying your business. And that's really what that's about, right? Entrepreneurs still. However, he's going a lot more specific with something that's very hot right now, obviously AI. What's really cool is if you build your email list, which is the third step here, around that targeted problem, it becomes so much easier to understand what to send those people. So there's two parts to the list process, right? The email list process. You got to build your email list, and then you got to serve people those emails, which we'll talk about in just a minute. But if you're just starting out, I would recommend getting over to ConvertKit, soon to be known as Kit in the future. They're doing a brand change very soon. However, what's really cool, they now have unlocked a new free plan up to 10,000 subscribers for free. You don't have to pay anything, and you can build lead pages and those kinds of things and get access to the Creator Network, all for free. So head on over to smartpassiveincome.com/ConvertKit. You can get access to their newsletter plan, which is free, up to 10,000 subscribers, which is amazing. So anyway, building your list. I think a clear, easy way to do this would be to create a solution that relates to the problem. So let's just say, for example, just to choose a random niche, let's choose running, right? And running isn't a good enough niche to start with today because there's so many different people who are talking about running and fitness and all this kinds of stuff. You need to get more specific. Like I said, the riches are the niches. So let's choose ultra marathon running. I'm not an ultra marathon runner. I could barely do 5 miles, let alone 50 or 500, however long they go, right? So let's just use this as an example, ultra marathon runners. But let's get even more specific. Let's specifically target male ultra marathon runners that are over 50 years old, right? Now, you could see how we can start to understand, well, the current problems that those people have are going to be different than a person just fresh out of college running ultramarathons, right? A person out of college is not going to have the same pains and concerns as somebody who's over 50, for example. So the person who's over 50, perhaps their kids are out, they're empty nesters now, so they're trying to run, and then they're feeling it in their joints and they have back pain problems. So what I'm going to do on this website and on my YouTube and on my Instagram or wherever I'm going to be showing up, is I'm going to have a 1-page PDF file of exercises you can do to reduce your lower back pain while running. And of course, with some research to understand that, yes, this is a problem, and to make sure that that's the case, even though it's a 1-page PDF, it is still something that relates to the targeted problem, which means that people who download that, I know what they're going through. And then I can have solutions kind of at the tail end of this, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But as you can see, a lead magnet or a free gift or a free offer, something that relates to the targeted problem. Not just join my newsletter. However, that can work if you have a newsletter that's specific to that targeted problem. Again, not just general to that audience, but to that targeted problem. It's going to help make this entire process much easier. Now, one thing that you might be thinking is, Pat, I don't want to become known as just that person, right? I remember a good friend of mine, Chris Ducker, he was known as the virtual assistant guy for a while because that was the problem that he was targeting in the entrepreneurial space, helping people buy back their time by hiring virtual assistants from overseas. And that's what he became known for. He wrote a book about it called Virtual Freedom. However, he wasn't locked into that. It's just what he was talking about for that season of his life and in his business. And you should start by talking about whatever it is the targeted problem is and becoming known for that to start. You can always branch out for there. However, I will say that in many cases, people will actually select a very specific niche to begin and they stay there because it's quick and it's easy and it's just targeted and there's enough people in that overall market to serve them and they don't need to branch out. And you can just remain that expert and you actually become complementary to a lot of the other what may seem like competitors out there because you have that specialization, right? That's really what this is all about. So anyway, building your list, offer a lead magnet, again, related to that targeted problem. But then what do you send those people? How do you actually engage with them and not just have them sit there as an audience who you now have their email for, but then they just don't do anything? Well, this is where the next step comes in. The next hole that we're going to plug in this 5-finger funnel. We started with audience. Now we have a targeted problem that we are now building a list around. Number 4, we need to arouse. Don't be dirty. I was going to pick agitate, which means like to stir up and to cause emotion, which is part of the process, but that's sort of a negative term, right? We don't want to be an agitator and keep poking our people. In fact, I hate when I'm on an email list and people keep poking me with offers because they just see me as a credit card. And I was also going to use animate to liven up, to bring to life. But I think we need sort of a combination of both, something that causes excitement, but also something that might arouse some sort of emotion. It could be both positive and negative. And we're going to talk a little bit deeper about this, but arouse is the word. So audience, targeted problem, list, arouse. And again, the reason this is important is because we need to get these people emotionally driven to make that purchase, right? And there's a number of different ways to arouse your audience in a way that is both logical and emotional that then lead into the sell, right? You can see this funnel just kind of leads people right to the sell so that the sell is just sort of a natural conclusion to this whole thing. So how might you arouse or cause excitement or bring some emotion to this list that you're building, the group of people who are there because you have that targeted solution for that targeted problem or potentially have that solution? So the first thing to do is really have them understand that you know what they're going through, right? So relate. That's going to be number one. And you could relate to them in a number of different ways. Number one, the words that you use. So this is why the research process and the communication process, the engagement with the audience, using your email list just not to broadcast, but what I like to call broad ask, asking people questions like, what's the number one challenge you have related to blank, ultramarathon running, whatever the niche might be, right? Then you get those answers back and you can reuse those words with your audience in whole. In the emails, in your copy, in your YouTube videos, the words that you use are very important. It's one thing to understand the problems that your target audience is going through. It's another thing to then relay back to them the words that reflect what the story is in their mind and the challenges that they have and the dreams and the aspirations they have as well. So the words are really important, and that's a part of relating. Next, your story. When I started business in 2008, my story of getting laid off from an architecture job that was my dream job, I was so devastated. I didn't know this at the time, but that story was going to be a key component of me and how I built my brand, and eventually down the road, over a decade later, how I then sold products. Because it was starting an architecture business in 2008, after I got laid off, helping people pass an exam online, that people really resonated with. It's what drew people over to my brand because they were going through a similar situation in their lives around that time as well. In 2008, remember, this was the Great Recession. So my story became really important too. Another way to relate is to tell and get really good at tell others' story. That's not grammatically correct, but you know what I mean, right? Don't just get really good at telling your own story, but get really good at telling other people's stories. If you yourself have helped people through the problems that your target audience is there for, and you've created solutions for others, bring those to surface, bring those to light, tell those in those emails. That's going to help people understand that you're not just somebody who's gone through something similar, but you've helped other people like them too, and they've seen light on the other end through your guidance, right? If you can show people and actually make them the hero of the story, this comes from Donald Miller and Story Brand 101. This is sort of basic marketing these days. Tell a story, but you aren't the center of the story. Your client, your student, make them the hero of the story, and everybody else will want to go to the same guide, and that is you, right? So this is, again, relatability, right? This is then the second part. Amplify the problem. And this is a phrase I got from a good friend of mine, Ray Edwards. He has a model for copywriting, and A in one of the acronyms that he has is amplify the problem. When you have a sales page, it's one thing to just say, hey, look at the solution I have. Even before you do that, you amplify or you agitate the problem. What are the consequences for your audience who has this target problem if they don't take action on this, right? And there's a really important balance that needs to happen here because you could fearmonger, you could go above and beyond something that is ethical, right? You could go kind of to the dark side with this, but you have to agitate a little bit. If there is no reason or consequence, then a person's not going to take any action. So you can use case studies of people who hadn't taken action. You can use data. You can use science, whatever it might be. Again, it just depends on your niche, of course, but amplify the problem. This could be its own individual email that you send out to help people understand that, wow, I do have this problem. Other people have it too. If I don't take care of this now, something not so great might happen. Now we're getting close to the sell here. And if you're going to be selling anything, it's important to understand that people aren't going to buy anything unless they have a reason to make a decision to buy. If you just say, oh, you can kind of get this thing wherever, whenever, right? A solution that you might have, a product, a book, a coaching program, whatever it might be, a software. If you just say, yeah, you can buy this anytime, then guess what? People are going to wait and wait and wait because there is no reason to purchase unless you amplify the problem big enough. But again, there's a line there. The way to get a person to make a decision is to create urgency. And this is another way to arouse or create excitement or to agitate or to animate somebody who might be kind of just like lurking on your list. Urgency comes in a couple of different ways. It could be time-based or it could be product-based. So one of my businesses called SwitchPod, my partner Caleb and I invented this. This is a tripod for vloggers. It kind of opens up and closes really nicely there like that. And so you can easily put it down. Anyway, when we sold that and created urgency during a Kickstarter campaign, we knew that there were going to be a limited number of spots available, right? So there's only a limited number of these products available. Therefore, people had to make a decision. And whenever we do a sale in combination with, I don't know, Prime Day or the holidays, we often will put a number of or quantity of those available at a certain price, or we send an email out and tell people, hey, we have X number of ball heads available and get them now while they're hot or before they go away, right? That's one way to create urgency and stir up a decision. Because again, if a person's not making a decision, well, they're definitely not buying. They're on the fence. They're just saying maybe or maybe later. Rather, I'd want them to say either yes or no. And one way to do that is, hey, you want to make a decision now? Because if you don't, these are going to be gone. That's one version of urgency. The other version of urgency, which is very common online, is the time-based urgency. You have up until this date or this time or this time to make a decision, or else the doors close, the cart closes. This is very common in coaching programs, especially cohort-based coaching programs, which we run at SPI in our accelerator programs. And always, the last day, within the last few hours, that is when we get most sales because people are forced to then make a decision. And, we agitate and we arouse people beforehand in these different kinds of ways that I talked about to help people be most informed to make a decision that is right for them. I want them to say yes, and I want them to say no. I don't want them to say maybe. If they're saying maybe, then I didn't do my job, right? So again, giving them all the information, but then giving them a reason to make a decision now because by this date or by this deadline, then you're not going to be able to come into this group or you're not going to get access currently. The biggest thing here, to sort of sum this up before we get into the sell, is this idea of emotion, connective tissue between you and the person who is on that email list, right? If you can bring any emotion, whether it's super happy or sad or angry, right? If you create some sort of, some businesses are granted an enemy. They have a common enemy. So if you are in the weight loss industry, the common enemy is fat, right? And that's who you're battling against. And in some cases, the common enemy is yourself and the mental that you have to go through. A lot of industries benefit from having a sort of enemy or a opponent, not necessarily a person, but a thing that a group of people can get behind. And then that creates a lot of energy and emotion around this idea of whatever it is that you might be selling or the target problem that you're going to be solving for. So bring some emotion and tell those stories in a way that really relate and bring that emotion. Again, if you can do that, I did this in the Pokemon space. I have a couple videos that have seen 12 plus million views on a Pokemon YouTube channel. This is my other channel called Deep Pocket Monster. We're about to hit 1 million subs, which is crazy. But a couple videos have gone crazy. And one of those videos, people are leaving comments like, I can't believe I'm crying watching a Pokemon video. And it's crazy because that video has generated over $60,000 in ad revenue on YouTube. So it doesn't necessarily mean you have to have a product to sell, but the product that you are selling could be the story that you're hoping people will watch all the way through. Your YouTube video is, in fact, a product in the sense of the term as well. Now, before we get into the sell, I need to sell you on one thing real quick. I need to arouse you. I can see how that's weird, but in my opinion, it's the best term that's available. Anyway, I need to tell you about how important having a website can be for this entire process, right? The 5-finger funnel. We're 4 fingers into the 5-finger funnel, but there's an important component across all of this that will definitely help you, and that is having a website. And if you don't have a website yet, I highly recommend checking out hostinger.com. They make building websites so easy. And in fact, it is the most economical choice that you can make today. Not only that, it's a smart choice. You know why? Because they have a team of people who are on board and ready to help you. If you have any problems, which many people do when they're starting out, you just go to their live chat and they can help you out right away. Not only that, their AI opportunities can help you as well. When you're building your website, you can use their AI assistant to actually describe what you want your website to look like and the kinds of things that it's about. And it will bring out some versions of that website for you, and then you can tweak them from there. It makes it so easy. You can even use AI to help design your logo and do some other things in there. It is incredible. So be sure to go to hostinger.com/SPI. Again, that's hostinger.com/SPI. You'll get an incredible deal that you can claim there. And whether it's a WordPress website or an AI-based website, they got your back. Again, hostinger.com/SPI. That is an affiliate link. We do get a little kickback if you go through that link, but at no extra cost to you. Promise you won't be disappointed. Hostinger.com/SPI. Now, let's get to the final component of this, which is the sell. Sell. Now, selling can be very scary for a lot of people. It was for me. This is why 2017 was when online courses came on board at SPI. When I started the brand in 2008, I waited that long. I could have sold courses earlier, but it was because I was too scared. I was so worried about what people would think about it. But you know what? When you know that you have something to offer, and it's not just a course. In fact, I think courses by itself with just information alone are not really a thing that you're going to want to do. You're going to want to create some sort of accountability within those groups. This is why community has become our business at SPI and why we're managing cohorts of people through accelerated programs through these courses, not just the information alone. Anyway, that's for a different video. I'll link to that video in the end card here as well. But what I'm trying to say is a few things. Number one, when you truly believe in what it is that you're serving your audience with, when you have a solution that you know works, your confidence will come through in the emails, in your conversations, in your content, and it's going to be so much easier to sell. So that's sort of lesson number one with selling. Lesson number two is if you have a result that you can share from somebody else, right? A coaching student or a student has gone through your program or a member of your membership or a software user, a user story that you have that you can share. Please highlight that. Bring them on your podcast, talk to them, interview them, put them on the homepage of your website. Those are going to be incredible moments for new people to see that they are not alone. Nobody wants to be first, right? So go and find that first result. And if you don't have that yet, go and get it. Go into communities, go into groups, offer to help a person get a result. Work them through that. You're going to learn a lot through that process, where to find them, how to work with them, what obstacles and struggles they have. But you'll not only have a testimonial, you'll also unlock that confidence in your brain that, like I said before, is really, really important. And number three, you don't need to sell millions of dollars worth of stuff right away, right? In fact, your first launch is going to be your worst launch in most cases. And secondly, every time you launch, even if you don't sell very much or even anything at all, should become a lesson learned for the next go around. However, I will say, if you do all this right, if you build that targeted audience, you focus on that targeted problem, if you then build that email list around that, then arouse, agitate, animate that audience. The selling won't even feel like selling at all. Like I said, it'll just feel like a natural part of the conclusion, but you have to sell. You have to sell. Selling is service. By offering something to somebody that they can invest in, they are investing in themselves. That's number one. But number two, if you don't ask, if you don't sell anything, you're just relying on AdSense or AdThrive or whatever it is on your website, you're losing out. You're missing huge money and revenue opportunities that are out there. And that's not the most important thing, but it is a byproduct of how well you serve your audience. And again, if you target that problem very specifically and you have those specific solutions, it's going to be so much easier to sell. You're going to get those results that then give you that positive feedback loop to then push into others, and then perhaps down the road get more advanced, use targeted ads, all those kinds of things. But those will come later, and I'll talk about those later as well. So thank you for watching this. If you want to check it out, again, so an easy way to remember this, not just 5-finger funnel, but Atlas, right? Atlas, like the dude who holds the world in his hands, right? When you have brand in a hand, when you have that figured out, and you have your 5-finger funnel, Atlas, ATLAS. Audience, targeted problem, list, arouse, sell. You got this. Thanks so much.